Okay, I'm just going to read it quickly. So, term with concern. Biological aging is a major health issue and a disease and mortality risk factor leading to enormous suffering, health and life losses. Science has shown that it's possible to slow the pathological processes of aging. Now that research is progressing and that interventions are becoming increasingly available, humanity has an obligation to pursue them to reduce suffering for the sake of global benefits. The economic burden of an aging population strains public budget and slows the growth of GDP worldwide. In recent years, scientists have slowed aging and prolonged healthy lifespan in many disparate animal models, nematode, Drosophila, mice, rats, lemurs, etc. Assuming common fundamental mechanisms, it should also be possible to slow aging in humans. Scientists have researched or proposed an increasing number of interventions to prevent or perhaps to cure, to some extent, aging-related pathological processes, reducing the burden of chronic diseases and the risks of all-cause mortality in humans. Such interventions range from healthier lifestyle to curative and preventive medicines. Greater amounts of research could result in greater advances for the benefits of all humanity. As we gain greater knowledge, we should be better able to reduce the debilitating pathologies associated with aging, such as cancer, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and Alzheimer's disease. Therapies targeted at the fundamental mechanisms of aging will be instrumental in counteracting age-related pathologies. In 2018, the World Health Organization acknowledged the importance of aging and health, granting a special code to aging-related conditions in the International Classification of Diseases, and including healthy aging into its health program for the forthcoming decades. This letter is to call the action for greater funding and research into both the underlying mechanisms of aging and methods to postpone it. Such research may yield dividends far greater than equal efforts to combat the age-related issues themselves. As the mechanism of aging are increasingly understood, scientists can develop increasingly effective interventions that will help prolong healthy, active, and productive lifespan for many people. Through science, mankind has eradicated smallpox and sequenced the human genome. Our scientific success in medicine have immeasurably benefited humanity. The aspiration to strongly slow, stop, or even reverse aging is at least as important, and the goal is equally, I think, within our grasp. Also, the economic potential of the longevity dividend is gigantic. If medicine could add only 1 year of healthy longevity, not only would immeasurably suffering be abolished, but the global GDP would gain at least 100 billion euros annually. To achieve this goal, we need a peaceful army of scientists working on the problems of aging. 25,000 such scientists working together for 5 years would require a scientific investment of around 12 billion euros. While this sum seems large, it is in fact 20 times less than the value of annual sales of the whole cosmetic industry. And it's incomparably less than medical spending on age-related diseases. If such research succeeds in adding even a single year to global healthy human lifespan, at least 100 billion euros added to GDP would represent an over 800% return on investment recurring every year. It could be enough to change significantly the world. So thank you for all the researchers writing this during the last night. So any comments?
I think I sent the links that this estimate of is too low now of harm from aging, and I am ready to provide other calculations, judging from smoking, the scale of already existing calculations from smoking. Yes.
Thank you. More comments? Please feel, as this is like the nearly last session, please also just, you can comment on anything you like during the conference.
Okay, thanks. Well, actually, I was just following a version that was shared with me on my phone. I just noticed the odd, a couple of grammar things if we're actually using this text, but I'm not sure if I've got the final version on my phone or not. But
so we are very welcome for any native speakers to help us with the finalizing. Okay, so we send it around again, and then you send it back to us. Because now I think it will be too tedious to change it. Yeah, it's the content, yeah.
So just for context, the first version of this letter was, I don't know, 16 years ago, when few people had heard of Aubrey de Grey, and where this longevity dividends by Olshansky hadn't been written. And the point then was to show that there is scientific consensus that aging is malleable. It can potentially be tackled, not cured. We didn't even do that, but tackled. And it's amazing to me that this is now commonplace, and not just because we've all been immersed in it, but also because there has been a greater media awareness about this and a scientific development. So since then we've had other position papers that echo this almost verbatim, or obviously the figures will be different, and many people making the case for aging research on those grounds. So when you use this letter, just be strategic about how you want to use it. Back then we wanted to use it to show to people named reputable scientists think that we can do something about aging. Maybe your decision is that this is now so commonplace that we want to go further with this, or we want to aim it at a different audience of policymakers or payers or whoever. But that's just from a historic perspective.
Thanks.
I think that you don't necessarily need to do it in this letter, of course, but the economic argument that you're making, I think, really needs to be underpinned by some solid evidence, because it depends on a number of assumptions, and if those assumptions are different, then the numbers will be completely different. For instance, what is going to be the cost of the treatment that will give this extra year of life? Obviously, everything depends on that. If the cost is going to be gigantic, then this gain in terms of GDP may never materialize. Also, the healthy year that you're going to add to people's lives is probably going to be at the end, which means that they're probably not in the most economically productive segment of their life. So this gain in GDP, becomes then open to question. If you just push the healthcare costs back in time, again, the numbers may be different. So you really, in my view, this is the key claim that you make, and therefore I think you really have to have ironclad evidence and showing that you gain this under reasonable assumptions.
Thank you.
Absolutely agree. More evidence. And I just had a discussion with Sebastian, and actually what we were discussing is who is going to be the audience of this letter, what kind of audience is going to be affected by this letter the most. And my hypothesis is that maybe this letter will help us, maybe not convince the politicians, but maybe it will help us activate the community. And if this is so, then in my view, it makes total sense to mention that a significant share of population, according to the service, is supportive of the idea of using anti-aging treatments to extend healthy life. Again, we have evidence from several surveys, for instance, from Pew Research from 2013 on American population. And maybe it could be also introduced into the letter, because so many activists are still believing that the community, the society as a whole is against the idea, which is not true.
I love the letter. Actually, I retook the initiative that Caliban was mentioning at the Immortality Institute in 2014. In fact, I helped to, with the first letter 14 years ago, that was basically coordinated by Bruce Klein and then Caliban and other people. I could not sign because there was a requirement that you had to be a PhD, a scientist, a medical doctor, and it was not any of those. Now I have my PhD, but so I might sign the next one. This one, but I do have one comment, which is there were some references, some solid references that will be added, of course. But about the monetary issue, the first letter did not have any monetary amounts, because this is a very tricky issue, as you have pointed out. And I am concerned about that. Also, if I were going to use money, I understand this is called the Eurosymposium on healthy aging, but I would use dollars. Dollars is still the world currency. So, and even the World Health Organization, when they give numbers, the World Health Organization gives numbers in dollars. Obviously, maybe here in Brussels, they like to show that they also know what an euro is. But to me, the world currency is still the dollar. So that part, which was added, I am not in favor, because it is very controversial. We don't need it, because we are going to have scientists and PhDs and doctors signing this, and they probably don't know the financial numbers, and because it might be too tricky, too complicated, I prefer not to put it. However, because this is common work, and I support it completely, if the decision is to keep it, I will support it, because I am pretty sure that Didier, you are going to put the references that will back that up. But because that will be controversial, you know, we want to reach even Nobel laureates. When they see these numbers and they say, isn't this a bit tricky? Well, I do not have the answer, but I support this fully, with or without that paragraph at the end.
Thank you. Just to one second to point out, here, like in Brussels, the capital of Europe, the Eurosymposium is more than just the monetary aspect of the euro. So the idea is really the European idea. It's not so much about the euro and the dollar.
Yeah, so a few, well, first, this last draft was finished tonight, so of course it's supposed to be checked, among other things, also for language aspects. And of course, there is no reference here, because it was going to be added after. So we had already a few references, but I decided to put it out. But of course, the idea is for each number who is there to have a precise reference. After that, the question to have or not amount, I think it's better to have one, yeah, because otherwise it's kind of empty thing, in my opinion. But yeah, we can discuss this further. I understand there were let's say 4 things that we were discussing, but okay. There was this question to be radical or not, and to use the word radical or not, but there were more people against than in favor. There was this question, do we speak about Europe or global? So it's more global. And there was this question, well, it's no waste, do we have something precise to ask? And I think it's important to have something precise to ask, even if you don't go in the detail. And just because you were asking also for general comments concerning this conference, even if I am one of the main organizers, I must say it's really great to see that people were there from the beginning to the end, because very often at the end of one conference, you have kind of 10 people left here. There you are about 40, and there are people outside. So this is really very positive. And until now, we were not really fighting violently, but we can still begin. No, okay, it will be too early. No, really, it is. It's really. It was really great, I think, to have this. Yeah, and I have a few things to say in the conclusion, but I would also like you to add a few words to say how bad it is, and yeah. No,
so I will not say how bad it is. Oh, maybe it doesn't matter. I was going to say we lack references for the animals and for especially for the amounts. Perhaps 12 billion, I don't know, is not that much, in fact. Perhaps we can ask more, if you are at a global level. Why not? If you ask maybe 10 times, I don't know, we will see. I don't think it's necessarily so impressive. And also then it's, I guess the goal for the communities is to ask for signatures. And perhaps we could ask for the names, and people who have a PhD or who are medical doctors, they should put a PhD or whatever to make it sound more credible. And I don't know if we have a way to collect signatures, even though we put a disclaimer with that time that some aspects with references will be slightly updated, something like that. And then if so, I'm for example, very happy to push for having it signed everywhere. And I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Okay, so let me comment on the number that José raised. Should it be included or not? So DG always wants to end these conferences with some type of declaration or letter or something, right? And I told DG, that's fine with me if you want to do that. But if you do that, it has to be a letter that has something concrete in it that we can, give to people and say, hey, look here, we have some type of declaration or letter or whatever, and people read it and say, oh, interesting. But I had a feeling that last time when we had this declaration, it was so vague, okay, we want to improve the health of the population, blah, 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 that people who read it won't get excited by it because it was just empty talk, to be honest. So these numbers make it at least a little bit more concrete. But it doesn't have to be numbers, but there has to be some kind of concrete proposal that you make, that when people read it, there is like something concrete there, and it's not just empty talk.
Actually, I'm not an economist, but I'm not sure if you are talking about the GDP. Isn't all this work in the hospital, all this aiding patients, isn't that just contributing to the GDP? So maybe you need some other.
Okay.
I have just a comment on sort of how something that I think has been missing in the discussion, which is a little bit about how the money is given out. And as a researcher, we know that we apply for funding from somewhere, and then there's a group of scientists that judge whether or not we should get that funding. And so, if we want to redistribute funding to aging, we need to have special places where you can apply for funding for aging research. And so we know in the US we have the main funder is of course NIH, and it has an annual budget of more than $30 billion. And part of NIH is the National Institute on Aging, and that has an annual budget of about $2 billion. And so they actually have earmarked funding for aging research. And I think this is the main reason that the European, in my view, potentially, that the European aging community is not as strong as the American, because the American has this earmarked pot of money that has been going on since the 70s. So maybe we can make that also sort of a point. I'm not sure if that's potentially useful.
Thank you.
Yeah, an alternative to just stating the potential economical benefits is that you could usually you translate qualities into economics as well. That's something that you usually do when you decide whether to implement a treatment. I think the WHO has a limit on like 2 times the GDP per person, or 2.5 times. That is an alternative, that you could translate one quality into money, and then which the WHO has already set. So.
Can I briefly repeat my plea from the beginning? And I completely agree. If you put a number in there, Sven, I appreciate that you want something concrete, but this is not the crowd to play around with qualities or GDP, etc. I like that idea. You could argue, make a declaration, we want a European Institute for Aging. That's a clear, strong point, one single message that works. Or you could do what I suggested initially and just reiterate the point that aging is curable, which I think we want to test again, after all the Aubrey de Grey stuff, etc. If it came from somewhere else, then sense as a suggestion that scientists can put their name towards, see how many signers you get. But maybe a little bit more work might be.
Following up exactly on that, Caliban, exactly on that, because the original letter, the point is that aging is curable. That was the original point. Forget about money. Saying that we can reverse aging, that is the point. if on top of that you talk about creating an European aging institute or whatever, that would be additional. The conditions to sign the letter, as I explained, in the original letter, there were 57 signatories. They were all high-level people. As I said, all medical people, PhDs, researchers. I did not qualify, even though I contributed, okay, at the time. Now I think I do. But we want top people. And again, that is also why I'm a bit concerned about giving money, because I am going to ask Nobel laureates on this, and they are going to say, what is this GDP business and that? I am not sure. I prefer them to say that aging can be reversed than to say it costs 12 billion euros. But again, whatever, I'm supporting this. Oh, I also forget, Keith Comito, the Life Extension Advocacy Foundation, he committed to put this in their platform and to have a continuous updating and maybe a small modification so that we can keep on adding scientists. Because as I said, in the original letter, there were 57 signatories. My objective here would get to have an order of magnitude more, 570. And then if we redo this, not in 14 years, in 4 years, we are going to have another order of magnitude. We are going to have 5,700 people. So we show the increase. That is also why I thought keeping as close as possible to the original is important. We see the growth of scientists supporting this without talking about money. Just reverse aging. That is the issue, reverse aging. Isn't that incredible? Why do you need to talk about money?
Okay, so... Yeah, sorry to...
reverse aging is not water.
So, first I'm going to take away your microphone. Yeah, sorry, actually I see a lot of people still wanting to say something to this. So for me, this how it is now, it doesn't feel like the final version. So what I propose is we will make a follow-up after the conference. We give a text, we give the opportunity to add something to the text, and then we agree on a text to target group when we have 2 texts for 2 different target groups. But I think it will be too time consuming now to really to find a final version here. What I propose for the next conference is that, because also as me being half-time politician, of course, I like a resolution also with, for you they are empty words, for me they are an aspiration. So I also like to have a resolution. So maybe for the next Eurosymposium in 2020, we are gonna just have a version at the beginning, and then we have really a working group working on this text, and then have it at the final session again. And that, speaking about the next Eurosymposium 2020, brings me really to the pre-conclusion, and that is what I want to do is, so before Sven and Didier are having the last words, I wanted to thank all the people from HEALS, all the volunteering people, which namely are Vincent, Victor, Nicolas, Maya, the media team, Antoine, and all the people I've forgotten. So first, a very warm thank you to you. Then I wanted to briefly share something or my private thoughts maybe. So 10 years ago, when I came across in Brussels this topic, I actually then met 2 crazy people, and I would say 2 very positively crazy people. And that's actually Sven and Didier. And actually, I mean, I'm a half-time politician, so a lot of my time is like trying to find compromises and trying to, harmonize people. And actually, these 2 showed me that sometimes you really need these special individuals, to really drive a change in the society, to really change something, move something a lot faster forward than maybe otherwise wouldn't have happened. So to see this conference now and see where we started from, really for me is great. I think for me we had 3 great days, and I'm really looking forward to the next conference. I think these 2 are like my first life was a lawyer, so it's like we have this nice expression of sine qua non. So really, it's like these things without, if you take the two out of the equation, then the thing doesn't work. Yeah. So I think that's really what you two are here. Just as some quick facts. This conference is about 15,000 euros. There is, I would say, I don't give away too much information if there's one major donor of these presidents, and I don't give away too much information when I say there's one major organizer of the scientific panel of this and choose of this conference. So it's great to see that you already made an impact, that we continue to make an impact, and please give it up for our co-presidents for the last words.
Thank you, Alex. Maybe I'm not going to come back to the letter, but there is something a bit related to it, and that is that very recently, and that was Didier's initiative actually, we sent an open letter to the European Commissioner, Carlos Mulos. And if I remember correctly, actually, there was the thing in the letter that said we want a European Research Institute on Aging. So that actually was already in that letter. So, okay, that's all I wanted to say that kind of relates to this thing. Okay, so, well, thank you to all the people who came here. Thanks to all our speakers, to all the panelists, to all the people who have helped out for organizing this conference. It was really great. I enjoyed the atmosphere. It was very exciting. You were really great in interacting with each other, in exchanging information. Congratulations to you all. You can applaud for yourselves.
Okay, well, I don't have a lot of things to add, so maybe just please let us know. Well, there is the evaluation thing, but also privately what was good, what was not good, and even more important for the next thing, what we could do more. I really think, even if it's not good to say that for your own work, but that it was quite successful. And now we have a last drink at the Mort Subite. So fighting to have a drink at the Mort Subite is even more difficult sometimes than fighting aging, but okay. We will still try, and thank you a lot for being here, and thanks a lot for really working to make the life of people who get older better in a not so far future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Didier. And maybe one other thing. So you already mentioned the evaluation forms, right? Very important. If you have any idea on what we could be doing next time that is going to make a real impact, like if you say, okay, look, the problem is we don't have a biomarker for this or that, or we need a consensus on a biomarker for something. If you have a great idea for what needs to be done to move this field forward, and that can be done at a conference, then let us know. And then the final thing is, make sure you don't forget anything from yourselves in this room.